Hey, I just ran into someone at Consensus 2018 who is also from the Caribbean. I'm from Jamaica and I found out that he's from Trinidad, so there was a bit of a spark there. His name is Mark, and I wanted to introduce him and what he's doing and talk about what he's doing here.
Yeah, cool. So I go right into it. So yeah, I started in the crypto space about November last year at a blockchain hackathon, and then from there, we won a bunch of ETH, and I'm like, this space is really lucrative. I'm gonna see what's going on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, my whole incentive at the start, before blockchain even came along, is to go to a country or a city that was really well developed, so I can absorb a lot of things that go on there and a lot of systems, and just experience it, so that I can take everything I see and everything I experience and go back to the Caribbean with it. And so I ended up in Sydney, and it's been exactly what I wanted. It's like a well-functioning Caribbean. So I've then gotten into the blockchain space, and this is changing everything and adding a lot of transparency. And like you were saying earlier,
yeah, I was about to ask about that.
Caribbean is corrupt, so
it is.
Transparency and corruption don't really fit well together, and transparency wins. So,
is there anything in particular, like any specific project that you can think of based on what you've picked up in, I guess, Sydney, that you're already thinking of putting into place in the Caribbean or in your country in particular?
No, there's no projects that I know of that can be implemented in the way that I think that could really solve.
But are you thinking of making any?
Yes, I am.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
So what I've been thinking of is governance, internal governance structures, but also like internal communications within governments have to be tracked, so that nothing can be slid under the table. And that's the whole idea in a nutshell. Is that the fact that like all transactions, all communications inside of governments are tracked, so that and you can see how much hands it's passing through, because a lot of the reason why the governments overpay for things in the Caribbean is because of the fact that it passes multiple hands, and everyone wants a piece of the pie along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So you can track and see everything that's going through the line, and make sure that it's not being overused.
So you're thinking about focusing on communication for one, but also I'm guessing for funds. Say they get even something like foreign aid, which is very often unhelpful because it doesn't go where it's supposed to go. Like they could track where exactly that money is being spent. Like, are you thinking about putting that sort of system on the blockchain?
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, I think that's cool. And then you also mentioned to me that you said you had first found out about this stuff at a hackathon, and you apparently code a bit. Could you talk a bit about that stuff that you do?
Yeah, cool. So I created a platform called Javascript on Everything, or Joe for short. And what it essentially is JavaScript is a language that's used in education a lot, but it's also the de facto language of the web. And it's built up this prowess of being a really powerful language, but it's also easy to program in. And that just makes it really good because, you can whip up solutions really quickly.
Yeah.
But, and it's also a good educational language.
Okay.
And what's good about that is the fact that if I start off programming and I use JavaScript, I can really get feedback on what I'm programming visually. But it can run on multiple platforms. So you can,
when
if you want to...
When you say platforms, what do you mean, OSs? Like, what do you mean?
I mean, yeah, OSs, I mean devices, I mean all sorts of things. So the reason why it's called JavaScript on Everything is because I literally program JavaScript on a mobile device, iOS and Android, a desktop application, which means it runs natively on Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. It also runs in web environments. It runs on servers. It runs on IoT devices. And they're all connected to each other through the blockchain. So they're all decentralized applications. And that's with one language language being JavaScript. So that means you can take code that runs on a mobile device and then run it on an IoT device or a server, or and that way everyone on a team is talking the same language, which means it refines communication and things like that. But this language is obviously it's JavaScript, so it's it's very process heavy and things like that. So you need to focus in on it being the early stage solution, and then once you get funding or you get to other places, you can start implementing lower level code and refining everything from there, in a nutshell.
Okay, I think I sort of got what you're saying, and something I want to ask is this is something that's out there that people can find?
The code is actually it was open source, and I pulled it back down because I had to do some refinement.
Okay.
But it's going to be launched this year, November.
Okay.
And the reason being is because we're actually launching Joe with a bunch of products.
Okay.
And it's going to have a website. It's going to be at my GitHub repository. So it's Mark S. Pereira /Joe, but you can find me on LinkedIn. And
can you please spell your name out?
Yeah. MarkSpereira.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to make sure people can definitely find it.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's all I have to say. I kind of want to ask you if you have any questions for me that's related to being here. We could put that in.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you a question.
Okay.
So yeah, being from the Caribbean and then kind of experiencing the whole blockchain space, what is an idea that you have, I guess, that could solve a lot of problems that we have in the Caribbean?
That's a difficult question. I think I'd have to take some time to think about it, but I'll try right now. When I think about issues the Caribbean has, I instantly think about where funding goes. Because, for example, even people like me who have sort of left and I'm participating in the brain drain, when I think about helping, I want to know that if I say send money back or I want to fund a project, that it's going into competent hands and trustworthy hands. So I guess that's not very different from what you're saying. But for example, there's this project in Jamaica called the National Integrity Action, and they're supposed to be trying to do what you're saying, keep track of what politicians are doing. However, they're not thinking about blockchain at all. So if I'm thinking about helping Jamaica, I'd first think about reaching out to someone like that, to an organization like that, but also recognizing that they probably don't know much about that space. So I think a big thing would probably be education first and getting people interested in that, which they will be because Jamaicans love to hustle, and this is a great space to come into. Yeah. So I think that would be the first thing that comes to my mind. And if that's a good answer. Yeah,
that's cool because when I think of Trinidadians, I think of lazy people. So it's good to know that Jamaicans are hustlers.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I like the thought that you just said. It's like Caribbean people really need to focus on education, and what would be good to know is like because Trinidad's education system I think is deteriorating in a way, and I think there needs to be a lot of focus on younger generation and how they're coming up, and there needs to be obviously software built into that because in a way I think software is an extension of the mind. And it's automatic and it runs in the background, and it really helps us out. But I want to know, like, in terms of the Jamaican education system, how you think, like, what do you think, where is it at the moment? Do you think it needs a lot of improvement? Do you think a lot of these downfalls in the community in Jamaica are because of the lack of education and things like that? Because I do think so in Trinidad.
Well, I personally think that I went to a very good school in Jamaica, and there are some good schools in Jamaica, but a lot of the other schools around the island aren't that great in terms of the quality education that people can receive there, and I think it has to do with the lack of competent teachers. And I'm not sure how. I think it's sort of an economic problem because you can't get people who are really good without being able to pay for them. So I'm actually not sure how to answer that question because
you didn't go to a public school in Jamaica?
No, it was a public school. In terms of, but Jamaica's it was I think a measure of a public and private because you get in once you have a certain grade. But then I know there's a lot of funding from alumni, for example, and usually if you can't pay for the tuition, you get it paid for you. So I don't know if I would call it public, but it's open to everyone just based on merit. So it's kind of works differently from, I guess, other educational institutions in the globe.
Cool. Alrighty. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Any more questions?
Yeah. What do you think about the relationship between Trinidadians and Jamaicans?
I think see, I don't know that many Trinidadians, and when I think about, say, when I was in Jamaica, and I think it's good. I think maybe people will say things in the press, but we share a lot of cultural history, and I would say that on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give it like an 8. But that's from my own experience. So I don't really know how other people feel about this, but I don't have any beef with Trinidadians whatsoever.
I wasn't saying that we had beef. What are you talking about?
I'm joking.
I said I wasn't saying we had beef.
Oh, okay.
I'm joking.
That
was what I was implying.
What's your answer to that question?
So, my idea is, we don't really have beef with Jamaicans, but I would say it. Jamaicans really, they kind of come across as very stern people sometimes. But no, I love Jamaicans.
That's funny.
All of my Jamaican friends are, really cool people. But they're outright, and that's what's cool about them. The other thing too is soca music or reggae music.
Oh, okay. So.
Oh no, sorry, soca or dancehall.
Okay. So I grew up listening to a lot of reggae, dancehall, and soca. I have a really good friend in Jamaica who is literally in love with soca. So I've had to listen to it a lot, and sometimes it's a bit too energetic for me, to be honest. But if I'm going to a party, then that's the right place for it. But I wouldn't be sitting at my house listening to soca music. That's just never going to happen, even though some people do that. And are you asking me to rate them? Is that kind of what the question was?
Well, I think there's a big thing between not a big thing, but there's a comparison of soca music to dancehall music, because dancehall gets very provocative sometimes.
It does.
Whereas soca is kind of pure and
I don't know.
Yeah, the lyrics in some ways, it's.
Well, I'm not actually that big of a fan of dancehall because of that. I call it nasty music.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Sorry, we have an audience that's laughing. Yeah. But
he likes soca and soca.
But at the same time, say when I've been away from Jamaica for a long time, I sometimes miss dancehall music. So even though logically I know that in some ways it's not good for, say, the young mind growing up to be hearing certain things, I appreciate that music is the spirit of people coming out. Course, so sometimes I miss that, Yeah.
Yeah. Just do it with pure spirit. You have a really good rhythm dancehall in Jamaica. We just come up with some better lyrics for the youths on them.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just my opinion. I love all music,
Yeah.
All right, cool. Lovely meeting you.
Yes, it was very nice to meet you, and thank you. And you guys should check out his work.
Yeah, definitely. It's coming soon.